I was running late that morning, trying to make up for a promise I'd made to my son. Ethan, I told him I'd drive him to the bus stop instead of making him walk. We'd barely made it out the door with toast still in hand when I saw it. As I pulled up to the corner, my heart stopped. There was my 12-year-old Ethan. His small shoulders were hunched, and his backpack was clutched tightly to his chest. He stood face to face with a middle-aged woman in a perfectly pressed pantsuit. Her manicured finger jabbed the air just inches from his face. Even from 50 feet away, I could see the fear in my boy's eyes. "I've never seen you here before." The woman's voice carried across the quiet morning air, sharp and accusatory. "This is a private neighborhood bus stop. I need to see your proof of residence right now, or I'm calling security." A few other parents and kids stood nearby, watching with uneasy silence. No one stepped in. I eased my unmarked police car to the curb, careful to hide the government plates. We'd only been living in Silver Creek Estates for 3 weeks, and I'd gone out of my way to keep my job quiet. Being the police chief in a small town like Fairview meant everyone looked at you differently. And after Ethan lost his mom 2 years ago, I wanted him to have something close to a normal life. The woman's voice rose another octave as I got out of the car. "Do you understand what trespassing means, young man? I am the HOA president. I have every right to question suspicious individuals in our community." Ethan's voice was small and trembling. "I live here. My dad and I just moved in on Chestnut Lane." The woman, whom I would soon learn, was Pamela Harrington. The infamous head of the HOA's Community Standards Committee, scoffed. "That's exactly what someone who doesn't belong would say. Chestnut Lane, really? Which house number? Who owned it before? Why haven't I seen your parents at any community meetings?" I approached slowly, my tone calm and deliberate. It was the way 20 years in law enforcement had taught me to handle people like her. "Excuse me," I said evenly. "Is there a problem here?" Pamela turned toward me, her expression dripping with superiority. She was in her late 40s with an expensive blonde bob and designer slacks. A gold HOA president pin glinted on her lapel like a badge of authority. She barely spared me a glance. "I'm handling a situation," she said curtly. "This child claims he lives in our neighborhood, but I've never seen him before. I know everyone who belongs here. We've had issues with outsiders trying to use our private amenities." Ethan looked up, relief flooding his face. "Dad?" Pamela blinked, her eyes darting from him to me. She was recalibrating her approach without backing down. "You're his father." Well, as I was saying, as president of the Homeowners Association, it's my responsibility. I have to ensure the safety of our neighborhood. We have strict protocols about who can use the bus stop. I'll need to see your community ID card. The parents nearby shifted uncomfortably, watching the exchange. One mother gave me an apologetic look. Clearly, this wasn't Pamela's first scene. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "my son and I moved into 478 Chestnut Lane 3 weeks ago. It's the old Sullivan place. We're registered residents, and Ethan has every right to be here." Pamela folded her arms, her red nails tapping impatiently on her handbag. "Everyone knows the bylaws require new residents to check in with the HOA office. You have to receive proper identification before using community facilities. The bus stop is included in those facilities." "I don't make the rules," she said with a smug smile. "I just enforce them." I rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Go wait in the car for a minute, buddy. The bus will be here soon. I'll handle this." As he hurried off, I turned back to Pamela. This wasn't our first brush with the HOA. In just 3 weeks, I'd already received 3 separate notices. One claimed our mailbox was 2 inches too low. Another demanded we repaint our window trim to a more acceptable beige. And a third was a warning about leaving the recycling bin visible from the street. "Mrs. Harrington, right?" I asked, though I already knew exactly who she was. She'd personally delivered our welcome packet along with a 3-page list of so-called violations. She lifted her chin proudly. That's right, Pamela Harrington, HOA president for 7 consecutive terms. Of course she was. Her chest puffed out with pride, chin tilting upward like she was used to winning every argument. Well, Ms. Harrington, I began evenly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Questioning a minor without parental consent crosses several boundaries, both legal and ethical. My son was clearly distressed by the way you approached him. Pamela huffed, her tone dismissive and clipped. I have the full authority of the association board to question anyone on community property. It's for everyone's safety. We've had vandalism incidents, and the board voted unanimously to implement stricter security measures. If your son had proper identification, there wouldn't have been a problem. Something in her righteous tone made me decide it was time to stop playing the polite neighbor. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my badge, keeping it low enough so the kids couldn't see. But I held it high enough for her to recognize exactly what it was. Chief Marcus Callahan, I said quietly. Fairview Police Department. I believe you were just harassing my 12-year-old son while he was waiting for his school bus. That's not only against HOA regulations. Ms. Harrington, it could also be considered intimidation of a minor under state law. The change was instant and almost comical. Her face drained of color. The power she'd worn so proudly moments ago evaporated into panic. Her mouth opened, then closed again, before she finally managed to stammer. Chief, I had no idea you were This is just a misunderstanding. I was simply doing my duty as HOA president to ensure community safety. If someone had told me who you were, that's the problem, Ms. Harrington, I cut in, my tone controlled but firm. You shouldn't need to know that I'm the police chief to treat a child with basic decency and respect. Any child, regardless of who their parent is, deserves better than to be interrogated. The sound of the approaching school bus rumbled in the distance. I motioned for Ethan to come back. Pamela was visibly shaken now, trying desperately to recover her composure. But the other parents weren't pretending anymore. They were watching her every move, some with disbelief, others with quiet satisfaction. I'll be filing an official report about this incident, I continued calmly. Not as a resident, but as a law enforcement officer concerned about the harassment of minors in this neighborhood. And I'd like to review the specific HOA bylaw that supposedly grants you authority to interrogate children without a parent present. I imagine your board's legal counsel will be very interested in that policy. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Then one mother stepped forward hesitantly. She did the same thing to my daughter last month, she said. Accused her of bringing a friend from outside the neighborhood and threatened to fine us. We didn't say anything because Pamela runs the violation committee. Another parent nodded. She had my landscaping crew banned from the neighborhood because they parked in my driveway for 10 minutes. It cost me nearly $1,000 to find someone new. Pamela's face turned bright red again, but this time it wasn't authority fueling it. It was humiliation. This is ridiculous. She sputtered. I've devoted 8 years to keeping this community safe and maintaining our property values. You have no idea what would happen if we didn't have proper standards and enforcement. The bus squealed to a stop beside us. I crouched to give Ethan a quick hug. Have a good day at school, buddy, I said softly. Don't worry about any of this. Once the children had boarded, I straightened and turned back to Pamela. She was now clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Ms. Harrington, I said firmly. I expect to see you at the police station this afternoon to give a formal statement about your conduct, specifically your practice of questioning minors. 3 o'clock should work. Her jaw dropped. You can't seriously think this warrants police involvement. I was just doing my job. Harassment isn't anyone's job, I replied coolly. And targeting children crosses a line that goes far beyond HOA policy. In fact, what you did today could result in charges of harassment and intimidation. You could also be charged with impersonating a security official. Each carries potential fines of up to $5,000 and even jail time in this state. The blood drained from her face for the second time. For once, Pamela Harrington, the self-proclaimed queen of Silver Creek Estates, was speechless. The other parents were openly staring now, some even exchanging faint smiles. Clearly, I wasn't the only one she'd bullied. A week later, a community-wide email went out from the HOA board. It announced in careful language that Pamela Harrington had regretfully stepped down. She resigned from her position as HOA president and committee chair following multiple formal complaints. It also mentioned that she was being fined $2,000 for harassment. She was required to complete 40 hours of community service. The board issued a formal apology to all residents, particularly families with children, and promised to review every community policy. They wanted to ensure a more inclusive and respectful environment. The next morning, I saw Pamela hurrying from her white Mercedes to her front door. She had her sunglasses on and her head down, pretending not to see the neighbors she used to lecture. I didn't feel satisfaction, just relief. Relief that my son and every other kid in this neighborhood could finally wait for the bus without fear of being treated like a suspect ever again.